Thank you again for joining us for another episode of Queer Money. This episode is one that we're very proud to bring to you. As in the past, we've said that we like to share with you ways that you can do more and be more with your money. And this week we have a shining example of someone who has done just that. Steve Bolinger has changed the face of AIDS in Africa by doing more and being more. And it's very interesting to find out what prompted all this. We also ask that you stick around to the very end of the show so that you can see the amazing impact that he has had and is continuing to have on the face of AIDS in Africa. So let's get on with another Queer Money show. There's personal finance for the masses. This is not personal finance for the masses.
Okay, let's see if this card goes through for that $8,000 drink.
Right, exactly. Everybody wants to be a part of the in crowd. Everybody wants to look good.
My decision was, I'm not a victim. I'm not going to stay and work someplace where this is a problem.
Normally we don't drink on Queer Money, but because we're talking about a subject that David is rather vanilla on,
Grab a glass of wine because you're listening to Queer Money with the Debt-Free Guys. This is the only show helping our community do more and be more by talking about money from the queer perspective.
Welcome back to another episode of Queer Money. We have a great show prepared for you this week. We're actually talking about working in our communities and ways that we can do that and success stories of doing that. And we have a guest this week who has done just that, transitioned into working in communities and has experienced a fair degree of success in doing this. And we have some great stories prepared and some questions around that. So why don't we go ahead and get started by meeting our guest?
Yep. So we have former Denverite Steve Bolinger with us. He is the founder of DIG. That stands for Development in Gardening. And he left Denver in, I think, 2005.
2001.
2001, sorry.
Yeah.
And pursued some other endeavors. And we're excited to have him on to share his story. So, Steve, do you mind giving us a brief introduction of who you are and what you're all about?
Okay. Basically, I grew up in Kansas, and fortunately, I moved to Denver after college. And Denver was my coming out place, and I was able to find a great group of friends there, and Denver was very good to me, and lived there for a while, but then got to a point I wanted to move on. I'm not a person that stays in one place, it seems. So, headed out to San Diego, and then worked out there for a while before starting DIG. And before going to Peace Corps and then starting DIG after that. So,
right. So when you first got out of college and you moved to Denver, what industry were you in?
I was in finance. I was what they call a SOS trader, a day trader. It was when day trading was just starting. Mm-hmm. And so we were buying. I worked for a company that I traded this guy's money. He opened these franchise locations where people could come in and go trade their money. And so I traded a portion of his money, and we just were in and out of stocks within 30 seconds, a minute, buying 1,000 block shares. Wow. And just making a quarter point, a teeny, or an eighth off of those speedy transactions.
So that was a stressless job, wasn't it?
It was like going to Las Vegas every morning. So.
Which, after a while, I imagine gets a little tiring, huh?
It was fun.
Yeah. So you went to college and got a finance degree. So was your original plan to get into financial services?
Yeah. I mean, the original plan was to, after seeing the movie Wall Street, go and be like Gordon Gekko and make all this money. But life changes and takes you on a different path, and you also realize that's not what it's about. And so it was intentionally I was wanting to be real heavily involved with finance and go to New York, but just life took me in different directions that were more wholesome, I guess, and purposeful.
Sure. Interesting. So you said you originally planned on going to New York. What was the draw to Denver?
Well, that's where they we opened an office in Wichita first, Kansas, and that's where he was from, the investor. And then he was opening up an office in Denver, and then he asked some of us to go open the office in Denver, and that's how I got to Denver. And once I got there, then I realized that's where I wanted to stay. So.
Gotcha. Denver's a great city. It seems like it does attract a lot of individuals from the surrounding states, Nebraska,
Yep.
Kansas, Wyoming. It seems to be the destination for quite a few people, especially I think for queer individuals in those days who were running off to cities where they felt much more comfortable or safe living in.
Yeah, it's definitely an island of. It was my first gay experience, first gay bar, it was everything. And it was, I couldn't believe all these people were like me. So I felt really, and I had a great group of people that adopted me and took me in and treated me well. And just, so it was a good place for me, very safe place.
You found your cheers, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Was that JR's?
Right.
JR's wasn't there yet. It was the Grand. I don't know.
Oh, the Grand,
yes, definitely. Remember those days.
Good times. So it's interesting. When I first moved out here, I didn't know that there was a gay scene. That wasn't really my draw. But when I discovered the gay scene, I was really taken aback by how big it was at that time. I mean, there were a lot of guys in town, and there was a decent club bar scene to go to, which, coming from Philadelphia, I was quite surprised to find out about. So you obviously had a similar surprise. What was that scene like for you at the time? What was it like connecting with your people? How was that coming from where you did to coming to, finding your people?
Oh, it felt so great. I was so excited for every weekend to meet people and to get back, go to that social environment in a bar and actually see people that were like me. And it was scary at first trying to meet those first people, but it just, I dominoed into a good group of people. And it was a blast. It was like complete. I was away from all my relatives, anybody that knew me, and I could be my true self. I didn't have to hide anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that felt so good. And
Did something that David and I have in hindsight felt that we experienced coming from the backgrounds that we did, that when we finally found our people, we really reveled in that, and we almost kind of the way that we ended up acquiring all the debt that we did, that we ended up having to pay off, was that we were sort of over-validating ourselves to make up for sort of lost time when we were younger, having felt less than or awkward, and not necessarily having the same life experiences that our straight peers had at the same age. Did you find a similar disconnect, that you loved the scene, you loved the people that you were meeting with, but you kind of had a struggle with trying to validate yourself in some kind of way, or making more mistakes in certain areas that you shouldn't?
Oh, I mean, I wasn't a person that was spending a lot of money because I didn't have a lot of money. I was always living basically surviving, so I wasn't driving nice cars or buying nice clothes or, trying to keep up with the Joneses in that way, or the gay scene in that way.
Sure.
So it was, I didn't get myself into trouble that way. No, for me, it was such a new experience, and that I didn't feel out of, I don't know how to answer that question really, but I didn't feel out of control in any certain area.
Interesting.
I think coming out and transitioning in life, a lot of individuals take a varied number of paths. Some individuals can acclimate to being queer or being out relatively easily, and some individuals struggle with it, and some individuals have bumps along the way, and then it smooths out. And so it's kind of interesting for us, because that's one of the things that John and I reflect on from time to time is, were we trying to validate ourselves, seek acceptance in the community by trying to give back to the community what it was expecting from us. Why were we going out 4 nights a week? Why were we buying the kinds of clothes that we were, trying to put on a perception or an image that wasn't necessarily who we were inside? It sounds like you had a fairly cohesive group of individuals that you hung out with that maybe helped transition that process a little bit easier, which sounds nice, very appealing.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the great thing about Denver was, for me, now looking back on it, because I've lived in a lot of places now, Denver, everybody was your friend. And like San Diego, Fort Lauderdale, and the other places I've lived in the world, it's more everybody was your acquaintance. And Denver was always, people were authentic, at least at my time there. Mm-hmm. And they were my friends. And those people are still involved in my life wherever they are in the world. And it's just, and that shows in the fundraisers that we have. I mean, when I came back to Denver with this idea, and I had left Denver I'd been gone from Denver 6 years maybe, since San Diego and then the Peace Corps, and I came back with the idea of trying to do this nonprofit. A lot of people, a lot of my core friends, and just, they all came to those fundraisers to help start it, even though they haven't seen me in 6 years.
Right.
But they were my friends, and that's not so easy to do in other cities, to have that core support.
It's interesting. So it sounds like that may have played a formative role in you going from being a day trader to this being active in the community and fundraising. Can you tell us a little bit about that path for you? How did you go from being a day trader to, it sounds like you took a step in between and went to the Peace Corps, and then you started doing your own work in the communities. Maybe you can give us a little bit about that story.
Yeah, do a quick. So after the day trading in Denver, basically that investor had 15 traders. I was the second to last to go. They lost a lot of his money, and he decided to pull out of this business. So I was the second last to go, and so he closed the trading house, and so then I was in Denver without a job. So I've always painted, like interior, exterior painting, did that all through college and with my own business. And then, so I started doing that in Denver. And then I also went to work for First Trust Data Links, I think it was called. We're a custodial account for 401ks. Mm-hmm. And do you know Mike Jones?
No.
I worked there with him.
Okay.
But so I was doing that for a while, and then I went to JD Edwards, not the software company, mm-hmm. that PeopleSoft and Oracle and them now. But so I did that corporate route, and just got to a point in Denver where relationship ended. I was with Tilden, and so we decided to go to California, go together but separate. And I wanted to move west, wanted to learn how to surf, and so it was time to leave Denver. And so I left, and we left, and so I went out there and I started painting again out there, but also working at a gay bar, Bourbon Street. And I was just working 3 nights a week there, and I was making more money than I was in a corporate environment in Denver. So I was like, I can work 3 nights a week and play during the day and have a nice life. And that's what I did for a while. And then I got bored with that. But I saved up enough money to take this trip, I decided I was going to do an around the world trip and spend a year traveling. And so I went out on that trip, and I ended up doing 9 months, and most of it was in Asia. And that's how kind of my mental shift happened in what I wanted to do next in my life. And
Your time in Asia?
Sorry.
Your time in
Yeah.
Asia was where you had that shift?
Yeah, just traveling all over, and it's just seeing how 90% of the world actually lives, below poverty. I mean, way poverty level. And so I had some things happen on that trip that just changed me, and decided that I'm not going to go back and work for a stock price. It's going to have to, whatever I did had to have a positive effect on humanity. And that's pretty much kind of how I've led my life since that point. And I've been fortunate enough to do that. So
could you explain a little bit what the catalyst was for that mental shift?
Cambodia was the point where that country completely changed me. There's some people I met there, and some of the things they did for me when I was there, to see people with giving them some, it's a couple long stories, but doing some stuff for some people, small things, and how it changed their life. And just buying them a new coat. This one guy he's part of my family now, and but he was my motorbike driver, and we just got to be really good friends when I was there. And so I bought him a coat. It was the first new thing he has ever had in his entire life. He would sleep in it. He would wear it every day. He's never had something new. And to see how happy he was, that pure joy, and how people looked at him when he wore that coat, he was a different person, and people watched him. And that's when we don't see that in America anymore, real emotions and real happiness out of simple things. And those are the things that just changed me, and him in particular. And and I just when I got back from that trip, I started looking for international development jobs. And everybody wanted 2 years experience living abroad and language. I had some of the language, but so then I investigated Peace Corps, and that was the easiest. I didn't want to go back to grad school and go in debt again. So Peace Corps was the easy route to get my skill set up with language and international development work without having to pay for anything. And so that's what I did.
Sorry, I'm just going to interrupt you for a second. That's very interesting. You say that you were emotionally changed as an individual, and when you came back to the U.S., you looked for the most convenient route or expedient route to get you to where you felt like you could be doing what you truly want to do. And I think that you make a good point there. You said you didn't go to grad school because you would acquire the debt. And we live in a culture, I think, here where we're kind of told that you need to have it be done this way, or you need to do it the best way. And that oftentimes becomes such a roadblock to people actually getting to where they want, to being able to do what they want, that maybe they don't ever get back to doing what they want because they've taken too much time away from that initial emotion or change or whatever it was that brought about this idea to make a change.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. After doing that year trip or 9 months that's all the education a person needs, really. Changes you so much, and it just
Can I ask you about that?
Yeah.
How did you prepare for that? You said you saved enough money. How did you know how much to save? How did you start tracking your course? Like, if somebody was inspired by what your story is, how would they try to replicate that in their own way?
You can go to American. Well, I don't know if American Airlines still does it, but they have an around the world ticket that you can buy, and you get certain flight segments per continent. It's customizable, but it's around. Depends how you do it, but I paid like around $5,000 for it.
Okay.
And so you're going in a certain path around the world, and you got all these flight segments, so you just kind of have to work in those parameters. And I did research on how much countries would cost, and people really encouraged me to go to India or Asia, and it was the most inexpensive place. Africa is not cheap, and it's a lot harder to travel and more expensive. But Asia was pretty easy and very diverse. So I spent most of my time there, and then once you get on that trek, there's a lot of people doing around the world, not Americans, but South Africans, Europeans, everybody. So, they kind of help. Also, you just share stories, and they kind of guide you, and sometimes you leapfrog them in a totally different country. It's just kind of there's a lot of people in that same circle, and
it's like a fraternity.
Right.
Yeah,
I was going to say it's like a group of nomads that keep on passing each other.
Yeah.
When I was fortunate to do some trekking in Nepal, and that was one of the things that we ran into regularly. We would meet individuals who were fresh out of college or out of military service in their country, and that's what they were doing, was spending a year or two traveling around the world. And similar to you, they were making that global, wanted to circle the world trip so that they could get experience in lots of different countries.
Yeah. And I was still trading. I was trading my own stuff to pay for that trip. I'd get to a place to be like, okay, I need some money, I need to sell some stock. So, but that's also partly how I funded it, through continuing to trade stocks.
Interesting.
Gotcha. So was the draw to Asia primarily financial, or was there another reason to go there?
My stepsister does a lot of traveling for recruiting for private college, and so she really encouraged me to go there. And some people that would come into the bar that I worked with in San Diego, because I would tell people, oh, this is what I'm going to go do, and then so they would tell me, oh, you need to go here, 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 and a lot of people suggested Asia, and but I started in Australia, then went to Philippines, then Southeast Asia, India, and then did a couple of stops in Europe, and then back home, and New Zealand. But most of it Asia. And yeah.
And was this the trip when you were in Hong Kong and you started the recycling company, or was that a different time?
I did stop in Hong Kong on that round the world trip, and I wrote in my journal, it's a great place, but I could never live here. But then I go back and live there.
So that was a
separate trip, because
Gotcha.
my husband Brian, he was working. Hong Kong came about because he was working for Cathay Pacific. They're the main airline there, so he was working there for them, and so that's how I had been going back and forth to Hong Kong, and then stayed.
Gotcha.
For about 3 years.
So you did this world trip. It changed you. You came back to the States, and did you come back to San Diego, or did you return somewhere else?
Yeah, I came back to San Diego, and then was looking for the job in the international development, and then decided to do Peace Corps. Did all my paperwork for Peace Corps, the whole process for that. Had my interview, and they basically said, yeah, you can, if you want to go immediately, which I did, you could probably go to West Africa. So and that's where they sent me.
Gotcha.
Because I had agricultural experience and I spoke French, so they that was always an immediate position, and so they sent me there to Senegal.
So to get in the Peace Corps, is it always a requirement to have another language?
No, you don't have to. You have to have a college degree, and that's it. And
Gotcha. And what did you do in your time in the Peace Corps?
I was an urban agricultural specialist, I guess. So I worked in the city of Dakar, and it's their capital city. It's about 4 million people or so, and I worked with women's groups to help them create these urban gardens and how to sustain them. And when my Peace Corps boss asked me if I would do a project for this hospital, which is the University Hospital for HIV and AIDS. And so he had already been talking with the head doctor there about this project. And so we got a grant from USAID, Peace Corps did, to do this project. So we built a garden there next to the hospital to provide the vegetables. When you're sick in Africa, in these hospitals, they don't provide food. Your family usually has to bring your food, and sometimes you're not eating at all. But so we were trying to provide a source of food for people with HIV, and because they're on the meds, and it's very difficult if you're not nourished while you're being medicated. And so we were trying to provide that source of food for the kitchen to actually provide the vegetables for the patients. And so we started with that garden, and it just blew up. I mean, it was such a great success. And that's when I thought, well, why? I did some research to see if anybody else was doing it, and nobody had that idea. And there was gardens out there, but that was their focus of taking these gardens, building them in next to HIV clinics, outpatient centers, and replicating that. So I asked Sarah one day if she would be interested in helping with that, and she did. She said yes, but she didn't. I don't think she realized what I was asking. So,
and who's Sarah again?
Sarah's the other founder.
Okay.
So she was in Peace Corps with me, and she lived in a village out the village. And so she would come in Dakar occasionally for Peace Corps office stuff. So we would have a regional house there where Peace Corps volunteers would hang out and stay. It's kind of like a little resort for Peace Corps people just to get away from their village and, have a kitchen to cook in and stuff like that, watch TV. So she was there, and so we were talking about it, and she would come volunteer at the garden whenever she was in town. So she knew the work I was doing, and so I asked her if she would help, and I think she said she was thinking, "Oh, I'm just going to help write some papers or do this or that," but she didn't know she was going to be running it. So
that's interesting. I'm just going to take a step back. One of the things that you talked about is, I think, is one of the key items that I see recurring, a key theme I see recurring whenever I meet somebody who has done something that has gone on to be successful. And that's this idea of looking around and you see that there's a need. And then you figure out how to use your current skills, your current skill set to be able to fill that need. So you had been in the Peace Corps, you had some farming experience before going in, and then while you're there, you see this opportunity, and then you say there's a need here that you can fill with these urban gardens that would help individuals. Specifically, you niched into this idea of working specifically with individuals who were HIV positive. Is that right? Or were in the hospitals?
Yeah. It was. I'll tell you, this is I felt if I left Peace Corps and I came back to the States and I just got a job, I would be doing humanity a disservice. Because I had this gift, I had this idea, and I had this gift in my head that I could give this to people, or I could go back to the States and not do anything. And I think that's a crime. So I knew this was, I did those trips and traveling and all this, trying to find what I'm supposed to be doing in my life. And that was the point where I've never had this feeling before. This is what I'm supposed to do. With my whole heart, I don't know how we're going to do it, but I felt this immense peace with myself that I've never felt before, because this was like, this is what I'm here to do. I knew it wasn't going to be my whole life, but I knew this is what I needed to give. And I've never felt that peace before in my life.
How did that, can you describe that a little bit? How did that come on? Was it sort of something that came to you over the course of time, or was there like they always say, an aha moment, like, this is what I'm supposed to do? Like, how did that come about? Like, so that people can pay attention to, figure out, what they're looking for.
Yeah, I don't know what that, I can't pinpoint a day or a conversation to where it clicked, but but it was just like, in a matter of a couple of days, I guess things came together, a thought, and doing research to see if anybody's doing it, and then that thought just stuck in my head, and then I just couldn't get it out, and I was like, okay, what are we going to do next? How are we going to do it? And so much that I quit Peace Corps early to come back and do it. And that could have been, I definitely could have stayed. My boss at Peace Corps was really going to help me. He wanted me to stay so much, and he said, I'll let you work on this project and just stay here and do it, but develop the project here while you're here. And looking back on it, I should have done that probably. He offered for me to stay and finish out my term there, and give me a lot of things. He was going to really cater to whatever I needed, and but this thought in my head just kept going, and so it would have been better if I'd have probably stayed, but I came back and dove into writing the 501c3 and doing all the paperwork, and came back to San Diego and decided we were going to have our first fundraiser there, and do San Diego, Denver, and Los Angeles. Because those were where I had a network of friends. But yeah, it was, that's where I don't know where I was going with that thought, but.
So you realized that this was what your passion was. You realized that you were motivated to do this. And although I don't want to say that you had a comfortable life, but you had kind of things already planned for you. You had a way of life, but you said, this is a burning desire inside me. I'm willing to give up what I'm doing today. This secure life, I'm willing to give that up to go back and do something that is motivating to me or passionate. I'm passionate about. And then you came back to the United States and you went through this process. So what was your real goal when you left? You left is it Senegal again?
Yeah.
So you left Senegal, came back to the United States, and your goal was to go back and do what?
Well, Sarah and I met with some other big nonprofits, big U.S. nonprofits in Senegal, and to see if we could get them to sponsor a garden, or we could work with them in a capacity to complement their programs, because we do we work with a lot of other nonprofits that are like I said, there wasn't anybody just doing gardens, and that's their focus. You'll have like Family Health International that's doing nutrition. They're doing HIV counseling and support and all that type of stuff, and with nutrition, and they may be doing child care stuff. They have all these things, but for us, we were kind of a complementary thing that they could tack on, and that's what we did with these other nonprofits. And so we worked with them. So we had those meetings in Senegal before I came back. So we already had a project, and they were going to give us $5,000 to pay for the garden. That's what they're going to do. And so I came back to do the paperwork for the 501c3, and then also raise some money to support myself over there and any other projects that we did. So that was the goal, was to get our nonprofit status and then get some money from my network of friends, and that's where the gay community really stepped. The DIG would not exist if it wasn't for the gay community. It's simple. We didn't tap into Sarah's network of friends till a year or so later, but the gay community is the ones in Denver and San Diego and LA that basically founded DIG. So it would not exist without that.
And why do you think that is? Is it because they're tied to you, because of the queer community is tied to HIV/AIDS, or is it just the philanthropic motivation?
I think it's a combination thing. Fortunately, I worked in the bar in San Diego during my time there, and it was one of the most popular bars. So a lot of people knew me, and I had a lot of acquaintances there. I guess it's trust. When people, they had to trust me and believe in me to come to the event and then to give the money. I think HIV was also a much higher. 10 years ago, it was more on people's radar. It's not so much now. So there was a definite, an authentic cause that was in their mind that it would go to, and then here's somebody that they know that's going out and trying to do something about it. So they felt more connected to the cause. I mean, being gay, we're connected to the cause with HIV, but they're also connected, I guess, with me because I would be the one going over and doing it. And that's a lot of social responsibility in itself. Is like when you do start that nonprofit, and I didn't realize this until later, is like, yeah, you start these things, but you're also committed to them. You can't just shut it down in a year. This is your friend's money, and you're responsible for that, and they're expecting things from you. I didn't ever really think of it that way, or it wasn't my motivation, but it was. It's something you just can't walk away from.
Right. It's the reality of being in that space, of being in that nonprofit space, that you are taking other individuals' money.
Yep. And it's and they trust you to do the right thing.
So let's fast forward a little bit. Then you were able to generate enough money, and you were able to go to Africa. Did you go back to Senegal?
Yeah, we raised, within the 3 cities, we raised $40,000. So,
wow.
And we thought that was a lot of money, and it was definitely to get us going. It lasted us for a year. So we went back to Senegal, and I worked in Dakar, and then there's another town in the southern part of Senegal that we worked in as well. We did another project there. So we did 2 projects in Senegal, and that's where after that, our next projects we've never had to search for projects. They all came to us because people just they would find out about us, and that they would know a friend that would have a nonprofit. That's how we went to Uganda. It was one of our board members. Her friend was a doctor that worked in Uganda. She was a professional kayaker. And so she would go to Uganda, but she had a health clinic there. And so she wanted for us to put a garden there. So it was always the domino of the right people coming in at the right time. The universe just kind of putting the right people in front of you to help you go where you needed to go. Yeah. And that's the beauty of it, is when you start doing what you're supposed to do, it just kind of falls into place.
Yeah, I like that.
Very law of attraction.
Yeah, well, I like what you just said there, and I think that maybe might be the money quote from this is when you start doing what you're supposed to do, things start to fall into place. Oftentimes individuals, they yearn for a certain type of success or a certain type of, well, maybe that's not what you're supposed to be doing. Yeah, yep. And they work and they spend all this time and effort, and why can't we be successful? Well, maybe you're not doing what you're supposed to do, or maybe you're not doing it the way you're supposed to do. So I really like that. I appreciate you say that.
I do think that lots of people get on the gerbil wheel. And there are different kinds of gerbil wheels, but I think lots of us get on these gerbil wheels and we don't pay attention to what it is we most want or why we're here. You know, a lot of us feel compelled to go to college, maybe we don't necessarily need to even go to college. We got wrapped up in the gay scene, and that distracted us for several years. You obviously were open to hearing what, from the universe or whomever, why you were put on this earth, and then it came to you and everything just kind of opened up. I think it's very fascinating.
And I'm just going to go back to that whole idea of recognizing that there was a need. As soon as you start to fill that need, individuals who also have that need are going to be attracted to that, or want to help in filling that need are going to be attracted to that. So you start to grow that influence, or if you go law of attraction, you grow that vector of attraction to out towards other people and other things.
Yeah. There's so many people that want to be involved in something. That's what I've found is everybody would be like, oh, I can't do what you've done, or a lot of people don't have the capacity of just dropping something and going, but they do want to do something good, and that's where your donors come in, or giving your time, or a place to stay, or renting, or donating a place for the fundraiser. I mean, all these people, it's the generosity of others that makes all this possible. Yeah. And that's not everybody can jump on a plane and go do it, but you can give in so many other ways. Mm-hmm. And giving the people the opportunity. And I thought I get tired of asking people for money, and it was hard to keep doing that year after year with the same story. And I would talk to friends about it, and they would just, you're giving up people an opportunity to give a gift as well. So don't feel bad about it.
Right.
I mean, if you're giving an opportunity for people to be, if they don't want to give, they're not going to give. But most people do want to be a part of something larger, and you're giving that to them.
Right.
So speaking of being a part of something larger, how has this grown? What kind of impact is this idea grown to? Where is DIG now?
Oh, we're over 10 countries. This is our 10-year anniversary. And I'm so proud of what Sarah and Noah have done with it, since I've stepped out. And even you guys getting involved. I mean, it has a life of its own. It's like, that's what's great about this is I couldn't stop it if I wanted to, because it's a living thing now, and it just goes on it doesn't go on its own, but it's so many people, thousands of people are involved with the success and just, continuing dig, and it's affecting thousands of people, and we're over 10 countries, and so it's a continual thing that keeps giving and getting passed down from the grandmothers that learn. It's both directions. I mean, we would teach grandmothers all these practices and they're passing it down to their children, but then you go into the schools and we're teaching these kids, and it's the reverse effect. They're going home and they're showing their parents and their grandparents these new techniques, and so it's this constant exchange of knowledge in both directions, and it's easy to see. What's great about this is it's easy to see your results. It's not like a lot of nonprofits doing HIV education. Well, you don't really know if people got it, but if people got it when they're show you a tomato, or or
Absolutely.
they show you this basket of green beans that they're taking to the market, they're going to sell, and they're going to make some money. That you can see, and that's what's great about this project. You can see all the results and the benefits that come from it.
Well, and let's talk about that a little bit. So just so our audience understands, what DIG does is you go into communities and you teach them how to do sustainable organic farming and then turn that into a business. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much.
And when I was watching, doing some research preparing for this, there was a video on Dig's website, and I'm going to probably botch his name up, but Isaiah Otiano Yango said in the video that what Dig is doing is teaching his community how to farm, whereas they didn't know how to do that before. And I'm curious how they got to that space where they didn't know how to farm.
I guess it's they know how to farm, and as people do ask that question, why are you going over there? They all know how to grow food and farm, but they have been doing it the same way for so long. And it's farming dependent upon the seasons, the rainy season. And so everything is seasonal, but we're teaching them to small scale farming, gardening, with, rain harvesting techniques, or how do you preserve your water? How do you preserve your nutrients? All those types of things where they haven't really been taught that. And how to garden year round instead of just waiting for these cycles of rain that, like in Senegal, there's a weather pattern that comes up through Africa, hits the Sahara Desert, and then it comes back down. So there's like a 3-month period where there's rain, and then it comes back down, and it's done. It's like turning the tap off on your water. It's finished. And so a lot of people don't stop growing stuff, but if you show them, like growing in a tire or something, how to conserve your water, it changes the whole thing. You can have a tomato and an eggplant in there, and it's providing you with a lot of nutrition. So yes, they do know how to farm, but they don't know how to do it all year round. And they also don't know what nutrition is so much. They eat to sustain themselves, but they don't know what a tomato does or what a mango does, or carbohydrates, stuff like that. So we try and teach them how to do that. Gotcha. Or how to under the meaning of all that stuff, of eating more vegetables, because a lot of people, they'll eat fillers, rice, and they'll grind up the corn, and they'll make this fluffy stuff that looks like mashed potatoes, and it's just to fill their stomach so they're not hungry, but there's not a lot of nutritional value in it. So teaching them to grow the vegetables and show them how important that is to sustaining yourself instead of just mashed potatoes or rice. as
Right.
a base.
So then you're teaching them how to scale this so that they can then take this food to the community and sell and make a profit so they can farm some more and also spread the nutritious food into the community. How so that must take some business education. Are you in addition to farming, are they going through some sort of business training?
Yeah, Dig has progressed so much in just how, at first we thought it's just all about nutrition. We were like, our goal was, yeah, we just provide this garden, they're going to eat the food, and it's just about nutrition. But then after the first year, I realized nutrition's a side benefit of it. It's the community. All these people with HIV it's like being gay. They're in the closet. They don't. Their family doesn't know about them. There's so many women, grandmothers that I've worked with, mothers. They are the only ones in their family that knows that they're HIV positive. So they keep that secret. And so them coming to this central garden was their home base to work with other people living with HIV, sharing their stories. They were in their community to where they could let their guard down and, like us, be themselves. Mm-hmm. And so it was such a healing environment for them to, they looked forward to that every day, to get away from their families and to come be with people that they had a common thread with.
Sure.
So that was a huge thing that we came to realize. But also, we were teaching them how to grow this food, but then they would go sell it because the money was more important to them at that moment than the food. Mm-hmm. Until you get them to a point where, okay, they've got some money and now they can focus on keeping some of that food or growing extra food. So it was a challenge to try and get them past that point of, okay, it's not just all about money. Yeah, keep some of this for yourself. And
so it sounds like then that they picked up on the benefit of selling it on their own. Turning it into a business. Okay.
Yeah. We didn't. That was something. Yeah, we weren't planning. I guess Dig is just it kind of evolved on just watching how they took things into their own hands, and then how can we help them maybe facilitate some of those things.
Sure. Well, and that's why we resonated with it so much, because this is the epitome of teaching a person how to fish and they can fish for a lifetime, right?
Right.
I mean, you've given these people not only nutrition, but you've given them tools to be able to thrive financially and physically, and that has to be producing all sorts of positive results, both with regard to their health as well as to their local economy.
Yeah, they, some things happen by accident, and it's just in that first year in Senegal, we plant these nurseries of all these plants and for the garden, but then we planted way too much one time, and it's like, well, why don't you guys take these home? And that's then that was kind of like the step. Oh, well, maybe we should help them replicate this at home too. And we call them home. We call them hug gardens, home urban gardens. And and that really changed the dynamic of their personal income and personal food supply.
Sure.
And it's cheap. We would spend, we found out that spending $100 on that, which that's a lot of money there. You'd get $300. They would save $300 a year. They either make $300 or save $300 in their expenses.
Wow.
So $100 investment changes everything, and that's just 1 year. So.
Right. I think how many, coming from that stock background, how many times would you like to have placed that bet and had a 300% return?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but some things, it's just seeing how they react to things, and then putting more effort into that side of it, and it worked out great. And that's probably one of our biggest successes is those personal home gardens, because they're invested in that themselves.
Right.
Instead of going to this community garden where they don't really have complete full say in what they're doing, or because they have to work with the other community members, but that home garden is theirs, and they get very proud of that.
No doubt. So that's the juxtaposition of being somebody who has HIV/AIDS in a society where that has to be kept a secret, where it's a stigma, and then all of a sudden becoming the leader in your community. Not only are you providing food and feeding the community, but you're earning a decent wage doing so. You're the breadwinner all of a sudden for the family. What does that do to them? I mean, that's got to be just an amazing positive transformation in how they carry themselves.
Yeah, it is, and it depends. It depends on each country has a different level of percentage of people being positive. Senegal is very low percentage. Senegal is maybe, when I was there, 3%. Uganda, it was around 16%, and some countries were up into 30+%. So the level of stigmatism kind of correlates to how, if you get a lot of your population that's positive, there's less stigma to it, but there's still stigma to it. The group we were working with in Uganda, they were definitely stigmatized. Even though it was high percentage, there's definitely stigmatized. They've been kicked off. This group that we were working with had been kicked off land before. Nobody would help them. And so we started helping them, and they were just a rock star group, and they just did amazing things. I've never had a group just take something and run with it, and they did, and they created other businesses out of the garden, and so they became examples in that community. They became the breadwinners, like you said, and the successful ones, and that brought them out of that stigma. People looked at them differently. The president of Uganda, gave them a cow. He asked them to come work on his garden and to help him with stuff. Just that type of recognition.
Yeah.
So going from being kicked off every piece of land that they tried to use to being courted by the president and being respected in the community was amazing. And the leader of that group, again, one of those things, back to the farming in Africa, was he's one of the best phrases that I've ever had in my life, or with this dig experience. He said, "Steve, I just didn't know we could do this." And they didn't know that they had the capacity to do it. So just showing them and spending some time with them and going through that cycle and showing them it does work was all they needed.
Yeah, you don't know what you're capable of until you start doing it, and then other people can, like you said, take it and run with it. They can improve upon it. They have when you were talking about feeding them and putting their, just putting stuff in their stomachs to fill themselves up. We know that was probably having an impact on their capability to think as well, because we know nutrition affects your mental capabilities. I was just thinking, feed the stomach. Your stomach feeds your mind feeds your soul. So you've kind of completed this circle for these individuals that now they can turn around and help other individuals, whether it's financially or going out into the community and doing, turning these projects into something bigger.
Yeah, and that's when it really feels good. So,
right.
So, okay.
Good. Yeah.
I was going to say, when you have that moment, when you hear a quote like that, they didn't know that they were capable of doing that. Yeah. What is the juxtaposition relative to what you dreamed of when this was just an idea?
Yeah, so true.
I guess, can you word it different? What was the?
So,
Did you ever imagine that it could get to this point?
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't think I had a goal for Dig. So, and that was our second year into it. So when Patrick said that to me, so it was still, figuring out what we're doing, and and things were going by so. At that time, we were having so many people come to us with projects, and I was working in Kenya and Uganda and Tanzania, and so at that time it was really a lot going on, and it was, I definitely felt good about what we were doing as far as making an impact and influencing all these people. But also there was, and Sarah and Noah really kind of fine-tuned the program and made it into a better model as far as working with a community garden and then training, having those people become experts, and then they pop out to the next village and they're training that village. And so it's pushing villages to train each other now instead of us always doing it.
Right. That's awesome.
So I guess the end result, I mean, the end goal is to where you don't have to, you work yourself out of a job. So that's I guess with one of the kind of the frustrations when you look at Peace Corps, when they're Peace Corps in Senegal for 40 years and they're still there, still working and on the same things. And so you kind of get frustrated with why are we still there? So I guess deep down the goal for us was hopefully we won't have to be there.
Sure.
Right. That makes complete sense.
Do you find that other nonprofits maybe don't focus as much, either they didn't realize that they should focus on the education and teaching people to be able to do it on their own?
Well, I think Dig is unique in we have something very tangible. I mean, this is definitely a teachable thing, and you get results. It's very hands-on, and I think why we were so successful is we're on the ground doing it, and I'm myself, and we had the people that we would usually hire to come work with us were other Peace Corps volunteers that we had worked with in the past in Peace Corps, or you had a Peace Corps mentality to where you could live in that environment comfortably, without running water, without electricity, taking a bucket bath, and living in those hardcore situations and being embedded in the communities that you're working with.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of nonprofits don't do that.
Yeah.
They live in the nice area of town, or they'll live in the big city, and then they'll fund a project and they'll come out and they'll drive out in their white truck and go visit the project, get out of the truck, walk around, and get back in the truck, drive back to capital city. And we weren't that way. We were living in the communities, and with just the essentials, and getting up every day, going to work with them, and being the only white person out there a lot of times. So, and that makes such an impression on people, with the people you're working with, that they know you're here to help them, and you're committed to it, and you're one of them. You're treated completely different, and they take care of you, they listen to you more because you're there every day with them, doing it, digging, planting. It gains a huge respect from them, and more than just not other nonprofits that just come out, check on a project, and then go back.
Sure. So it sounds like it's important to be in the community.
Right. You're
At least for some of
Yes.
these nonprofits.
you're being authentic, and you are being a part of the community rather
Yes.
than being a server of the community. You're being a part of the community.
Yeah, it means so much. I mean, all these big NGOs, they all have these white trucks, usually, like Land Cruisers, that are paid for by USAID or other big agencies, and but we never had that stuff, and so we were looked upon much differently, and it's just I think we did it right in that aspect. Well, we didn't have a choice, but
It's a happy mistake or
Yeah.
occurrence.
yeah, we just never had the money to buy vehicles or do stuff like that. So it was, and you got to know the people so much better. And especially when you're going to work with them in their homes and get to know their families, and and if you're into trouble, which happens, they're there to help you too. So.
Gotcha. So let me bring us back around to you. So you established this successful nonprofit. It's doing more than you envisioned. What makes you decide it's time for you to pass the buck off to Sarah and go on to some other endeavors?
Well, after it was how many years? I don't know. So after 6 years of Africa, so I would go do the projects in Africa, spend 6 to 9 months there, come back to the States. We would do our fundraising circuit, which now included New York, Chicago, Birmingham, So I'd come back, I'd go do all these fundraisers, and then spend a couple weeks with family, and then go back to Africa. So after doing that year after year after year, and in Africa, I just don't have a life. I mean, I have a different life, but it's not a gay life. It's not, it's just full on work. So it was just enough. And I started becoming a magnet of negative things. I knew I personally wasn't happy because I felt lost in my, I kind of wanted my old life back a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be in the gay community again. And I wanted to be with my friends, and I would speed date my friends when I'd be back, and I would just be asking them for money. So I was just going from city to city. Okay, here comes Steve. He just wants money for the nonprofit. So I just got tired of that life. And Sarah definitely saw that, and I was getting more unhappy as time went on. And then I'm a firm believer in that comes in a mindset, and then some negative things in Africa started happening, bad things and life-threatening things, and it just became like the universe is, like you said, it start presenting these little walls and barriers. Like, okay, maybe I shouldn't be doing this anymore. So it got to that point where, and people were asking me, "Why are you going back?" I mean, I had some really bad stuff happen. And I'll talk about it later if you want. But so it got to the point of okay, it's time for one of us to. It's basically time for me to step out.
Yeah. Well,
and she was the best. And what's best for Dig? And the question came, what is best for Dig? And I was not best for Dig anymore.
Gotcha.
But Sarah was. And fortunately, she took it on, because I wasn't in the space to do it. And so, but she, I don't know if she really was either, but she was the best choice for Dig. And she's flawless. And so it was an easy decision to pass that on to her. That's how it kind of came about.
So
It-
telling you.
it's interesting. Not everything in our lives need to last forever.
Yeah.
Sometimes good things last for a short period of time, and we move on. And so I think that you carried, or you started the seed. You planted this original seed with your idea, and you cultivated it to a point where it was growing, somewhat on its own. And then it was time for you to go find another seed to plant somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. I knew it wasn't, even when we started it, I knew it wasn't for my entire life. I knew this was a portion of my life.
Right.
And it was, and it was what needed to be done. And I think Sarah, it was a positive, it was the best decision for Sarah to take it over and run it, because she was the front person of Dig and the main person here in the United States. I was the dirty person and going and getting, digging in the dirt, and we complemented each other that way, because she's very much so good with the aspects of what has to be done on the state side, and I was good at what needed to be over there. And as far as digging, building the gardens, and plopping down in the country and setting up, and so I love that part of it, that challenge of dropping in somewhere new and just creating something.
Nice.
That's a lot of satisfaction for me.
Yeah.
Good.
So just before closing, how can people find out more about Dig? Do you have any of that information, how they might be able to find out what Dig's working on, and or maybe even donate or contribute?
Yeah, the websites, you can search developmentingardening.org or reaplifedig.org is the website.
Great.
So,
yeah, and you have a great website. I checked it out, and it's very easy to use. So anybody who wants to donate can go find out how to do so there.
Yeah, and you can see the true impact that this is having. The event that John and I attended, one of the things that was most memorable was hearing those stories, reading those stories of individuals that this has had a major impact on, and they owe much of that to you.
Thank you.
And your community.
Yeah, it's all of us. And I would say if you go to that site, definitely watch. There's like a 10-minute video, I think, that. When I see that video, and I had nothing to do with that video, because it was done after I moved on, but I saw that, and it's just, every time I see it, it just brings tears to my eyes, because that's when that's what we did.
Yeah.
And it's so well done. And that's the impact that that's what I'll take with me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's the video they showed at the fundraiser that we were at. It was very well done and very heartfelt. So it was cool.
And one thing I'll just remind our audience that if you are donating, one of the things you want to keep in mind is that if you work for a corporation that matches, you can oftentimes double or sometimes even triple your donation. And read on the website how little money can go a long, long way in countries like this to help multiple families achieve some of the things that we've talked about.
Yeah, and it's like I said, it's the little thing, little donation. I mean, one of the biggest lessons I learned with this, I mean, we all know a lot of wealthy people, and the thing is, I came in with false expectations of expecting more from them. And I know they all have their different reasons and they're being tapped in different ways and they're giving money in their own directions. But definitely it's your friends and the middle class people that sustain all this. It's the little donations. Nothing is too small. You don't have to give $1,000 or $5,000. It's $10, $20. That basically keeps the sustainability of the organization. So don't ever feel like just because you can't give big money, you shouldn't give at all.
Right. Yeah. Everybody can give in their own small way.
Right. And that's one of the focuses that we have here on Queer Money is helping people see how through their efforts they can do more and be more with being money conscious. So.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right.
So we want to thank Steve Bolinger for joining us. To our audience, please like and subscribe and share this episode with your friends and family. We will have in the show notes how you can access Dig's information as well. And don't forget to come back for another Queer Money next week.
Thanks, guys. Thanks.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you again for joining us for this episode of Queer Money, one that we were very happy, proud, and excited to bring to you because of the change that Steve Bolinger has made and is continuing to make with AIDS in Africa. It's amazing what this one trip did in changing his life, and now that has changed in the lives of so many people around the world. It's also one of the ways that, as you can see, just doing more and being more can have a huge impact on people. And a lot of that focus came from the fact that he was willing to make some financial changes in his life. So we want to encourage you to think about how you can do more and be more. And one of the ways that you can do that is by helping Dig. So if you would like to, we encourage you to use the link at the bottom of the podcast page and donate to Dig. And as Steve said, it's the small changes that add up to big change. So let's do more and be more. And thanks again for joining us for another episode of Queer Money.
Okay, we just serviced you. Now you get to service us by subscribing to this podcast on iTunes and signing up for the Queer Money Lifestyle newsletter at queer.money.
Well, I'm not really gay.
Would help me if I had a personal chef made all my healthy meals for me. Right. So instead, I'll have a Snickers tonight for dinner.
The other end, I like the butts. So.